welcome back to Ampersand Unique Gifts and Home Decor. My name is Sarah. Today we are going to show you the Fabulous Flips Part 2. So if you saw my Part 1, I ran out of time. So we're going to put this into a separate video. And we're going to use Debi's Design Diary, Jami Vintage. We're going to use Sweet Pickins. I got some awesome Sweet Pickins in the color Basil. We're going to use oil wax, Jami Vintage, Decoupage paper, IOD transfers, and we're going to give these thrift flips a brand new look. So if you're interested in what I do with these and how they turn out, stick around. Don't forget to let me know in the comments which one was your favorite from today.
I divided our projects into 3 groups. This is our first one. Here, I bought these like hat box, cheese box items. They were 99 cents at Goodwill, and with my VIP discount, that made them 79 cents. I added some little surprise inside the lids with some of the transfer pieces that I had. And these are actually cardboard, but we're going to paint them and give them a high-end look. Kind of a vintage look. So we're using Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color Basil. And if you're not familiar with how milk paint works, it comes in a powder form. You mix equal parts powder to water, and it works best with warm water. So I just filled a bottle with tap water out of the house because we don't have any running water in the shop, let alone hot water. And then I'm just going to mix it with a fork. You want to stir it for about 2 minutes, and then you can leave it sit for about 2 to 10 minutes and let it thicken up. And if you go off and you leave it too long and it gets really thick and it gets harder to spread like here, then you can spray it with water. So I just have a water bottle out there and I'm just kind of spritzing it with water. Helps to move your paint around. You can also add water to, like I could have put water in the cup, but I just went ahead and sprayed water on my piece and then kind of spread it around a little bit better. But I am going to give these little boxes both 2 coats of that green, beautiful, vintage looking milk paint. And while we have those sitting over there drying, let's look at our beautiful Jami Vintage Easter cards decoupage paper. So going with that vintage vibe, I love that little fat chick. We're going to find something that's going to be really cute on our little boxes here. And, you know, so some folks have Easter baskets. You could use this as a Easter gift box or just something to have a display or a gift. But anyway, I'm just going to pick a couple of them out here that I think are going to look really pretty with that green and kind of fit the vibe that I'm feeling here. I'm wanting an edge that's a little bit more organic rather than that cut straight edge. And if I had used them like a regular label across the front of the box, then that flat edge might have been better. But because I'm going to put them on the top where it's round, I wanted to tear it and have it look a little rough. Kind of going for a look like it has worn off over the years. And another way you can do this is taking a little thin paintbrush and some water, and you just draw a little line around the, around the edges, and you tear it. But I'm just doing it with my fingers anyway. So I'm going to do both of them and get that organic edge around there before I apply it. Once I get the edges all finished, I'm going to use Debi's Design Diary Liquid Patina for my decoupage medium. And of course it has sealed itself shut, so I'm just going to pop a couple snaps down there on it and it opens right up. This is called Helpful Tips by Sarah. And seriously, then I'm just going to use a little brush. I just have a whole bunch of kind of these little nothing paintbrushes that real cheap, disposable if I need them to be. You can also wash them out and reuse them, so not being wasteful, just saying that the liquid patina will seal if you don't get it washed out pretty much immediately. So I try to use a brush that I'm not going to cry if I wasn't the most responsible paintbrush owner. I'm going to just put it where I want the, I'm putting my decoupage paper where I want it. And then I'm going to peel it back and put some starter strips down there with my decoupage medium. And I'm holding it with the other hand so it doesn't move. And that way I can go ahead and just spritz it with some water and fold it down, and then make sure that I have the decoupage medium all around the edge. And then I will peel that other side up. And that's what helps me to make sure that it stays where I wanted it. So once I've picked a spot, that just means that it's not going to slide around and risk ripping, risk not being where I wanted it. And then I'll go ahead and put decoupage medium everywhere else. I got to admit, it would have been a lot nicer if I'd had a little bit bigger brush. But I make sure I have a very healthy coat down there. Again, spritz it. That just helps to eliminate the wrinkles when you get your paper a little bit wet. As always, you want to be very careful and make sure, I've got a little bit of a fold in it, and make sure that you're very gentle when you move it around, because this will rip, especially now that I've kind of gotten it wet. But that just helps to stretch the fibers out. And I don't think I actually videoed, but I did take a little piece of saran wrap and wad it up instead of my fingers when I went through and smoothed it out. You don't realize how rough your fingers are until you try to smooth out a piece of decoupage paper. While my decoupage and my milk paint are drying, we're going to move on to another project. I picked up this adorable little relish tray cloche contraption. I got it at the Goodwill for $1.99, so after my discount it would have been about $1.49. It is actually from the Target Dollar Spot. So I don't know, I think it was originally $5, I think. Anyway, I'm not really a fan of that just natural color. I think it makes it look cheap. So we're going to use our Sweet Pickins milk paint and give it a beautiful vintage look. I'm going to spray the actual wood with the water this time. And my Lazy Susan is over on the side with one of my round boxes. So I just have this sitting on a piece of scrap wood. Makes it really nice if you need to just pick it up and get it out of the way. I'm going to start with the bottom of it first and give it a good healthy coat. And once the bottom is dry, I'll flip it over and I will do exactly the same thing and paint the top the same way. Now that our decoupage medium is dry, let's go ahead and paint the top of these. So you can see over on the side, I've actually already done one. But I'm doing my second one here, and I'm still working on that just original 1 scoop. I think it was maybe 1/4 of a cup. I'm trying to think what size that little measuring cup was. Anyway, of paint. The rest of that sentence is of paint, 1/4 cup of paint. So I'm going to go all the way around the edge. I'm setting it on top of that paint can just to get it raised up off of the table so that I can go all the way around. And once I do the edge, then I'm going to start working on the top, where I'm going to go all the way around the outside edge, and then I'm going to work toward the middle and try to feather in over top of that piece of our decoupage paper. And I'm just that's why it's really nice to have that organic edge around there, because I can kind of just feather that paint up to it, and it makes it hard to tell whether the paint's on top of the paper or the paper's on top of the paint. And then we're going to give both bottom pieces a second coat. So overall, everything got 2 coats, top and bottom. Another little project in our group is this little rooster, and I think he might have come from the Goodwill bins, or the Goodwill outlet as it's actually called. But I can't remember. It might have actually just been at the Goodwill. So I love the hand-painted design. I don't want to paint over it, but it's kind of beat up. It's not just that the paint is kind of worn on the edges. It's that it actually had some places that were like dents. I mean, they were actually dents. And I thought, well, if I'll just use my sandpaper there and kind of give it a little bit more distressed look to blend it in. And then I thought, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and use some of my green paint that I have and give it an overall paint on the sides and the back. It only took one coat to cover it really well. That raw wood soaked in that paint and it was absolutely perfect. I am back in the house now and I'm going to give my little relish cloche tray a good sanding with some 240 sandpaper. The thing about milk paint, it gets absolutely buttery smooth when sanded. I'm going to do the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to begin to seal the milk paint with some Sweet Pickins oil wax. Oh my goodness, Sweet Pickins oil wax in the color dark. The thing about the Sweet Pickins line is that it is food safe, so there's no danger in continuing to use this to have food and display food. Using just a regular rag, I think this might actually be a fast food napkin, I'm going to give an overall coat of our wax, kind of let it sit for about a minute or two, and then I'm going to come back with a dry napkin or paper towel and wipe off that excess. And then after it's had a chance to dry even more, then I'm going to take a dry cloth that's actually like a flour sack cloth, and I'm going to buff it really well. Moving on to the next steps for our wonderful little gift box, display box, Easter basket items. I need to seal this in. I mean, that's the thing about milk paint is it needs to be sealed with something. So I'm going to just sand it, distressing the edges a little bit. Remember, this is cardboard, so I'm really using a very light touch. And I'm going on the edges there, kind of where the corners are. I know it sounds funny, talk about corner on a round box, but you get what I mean. And I'm just kind of smoothing that out, getting rid of any bumps, and then again, taking a light touch and going over the whole top, and then I go around the sides the same way, just smoothing it out before I get ready to put something on there to seal it. My favorite thing to seal milk paint is our waxes, whether that's the Sweet Pickins oil wax, whether it's the Sweet Pickins beeswax, or in this case, our Debi's Design Diary wax in the color clear. And I'm just using a rag here and doing it exactly the same way I did with our oil wax. I'm just rubbing it all over, making sure I have a nice smooth coat, wiping off any excess. And one of the things I'm doing that's totally off-label, not the directions, so do as I say, not as I do, and that is where I am dipping my rag back into the wax container. Where I've dusted that, I did kind of wipe it off with the dry rag to get rid of any of that green sanding dust, but you don't want to contaminate your wax. You know, the products are all natural, and you really want to make sure that you're not contaminating it. So wise thing to do would be to scoop out some of your wax, put it on a plate or in a bowl, and then use that. You can always get more if you need it, but not to put your rag back in your wax. My can is very close to the end, and I'm not as worried about it because I'm going to be using it up here with this and some other projects that I'm working on. But just keep that in mind, that you're better off scooping a little bit of wax onto a plate and then dipping into that and not dipping your rag right into your wax. But you can see it gives it a beautiful color. It makes it a lot darker looking, but it will dry somewhere in between the dusty color it is right here and the very dark color it is when it's waxed. So it's not going to be quite as dark as it looks, but it will be a little bit darker than the original color. Decided I'd give these a little bit of an extra, and I'm going to take Debi's Design Diary wax in the color dark because I wanted to kind of soften that brightness from where I distressed that box back to its original color. And I just don't really like that off-white shining through, and I want to age it a little bit more. So I'm going to go all the way around the edges and the seam on the box. And then also I'm going to go around the edges of our decoupage paper and our label on the front to kind of age that and give it more of that. It's been around a while and it's starting to, kind of age the way it would, the way a label would anyway. So let me know what you think. Do you think it looks better with the dark wax? Would you have not distressed it? What would you do if you had thrifted these little boxes?
How come the stars come to shine when it's dark from so far away and show us where we are? What makes the sun go to sleep every night, and what's it dreaming of? I wonder.
Our second set of thrift flips is going to start with this adorable little ceramic bird set. I picked these up at Goodwill for 99 cents each. I think it's the perfect spring item to have these little birds. So I'm going to get the bows off of here. One of them I think was actually attached with super glue. The other one just came off real easy. I think was hot glue. But I'm going to spray paint them for their base coat. So this allows me to be able to really get that paint in there. I'm going to start on the bottom, then flip them over, and I can ensure that I'm getting paint down in under the wings and an overall coat a lot better than if I were trying to just brush this color. So here we are. We've got our beautiful taupe undercoat, and now we're going to use Debi's Design Diary in the color White Swan, and we're going to do a dry brush here. And what that means is I've dipped my paintbrush down into the paint, and then I wipe almost all of it off onto a rag, so that I can just take my dry brush and go over the top, and it helps to bring out that detail. I'm going to go right to left, top to bottom, making sure that I go over the whole top, and you can see that it's really bringing the detail out in these birds. Here you can really see the before and the after. So let me know, you think they were better before I painted them? Just plain taupe, or do you like that dry brush? So next up is this thrifted basket. It actually has a wire frame covered with that wicker reed and these are just recycled bottles that I put in there. They look like kind of like old milk bottles. So it gave me the idea that what we would do is use our DIY White Swan, and we'll give all 4 of these bottles a white, oh, did I knock one over there? A white coat. So we're actually going to turn them into vases, but we're kind of making faux milk bottles here. So just using a, just a regular brush, I'm going to paint all 4 of these bottles.
I'm waiting at the doorstep, I'm finally home.
And while those dry, we're going to start working on our little lantern here. I would guess that this Hallmark lantern originally had a glass hurricane type thing that went in there, but we're going to just upcycle it and use it without. I start with removing the 2 screws that are in here and getting the little platform out of the center, and then flip it upside down to remove the nuts that hold that cage like part in. Just putting my needle nose pliers in there to grab hold of that little nut, screwing it around till I get both of them off, and then I can disconnect the cage and handle portion from the wood round. And that is one thing that's great. This is actually real wood, so I just clean it up. I sanded it a little bit to kind of get rid of some rough edges, and then I cleaned it really well. And now we're going to paint it with our Debi's Design Diary DIY White Swan. And this particular can got left out in the shop, and it froze and it got really thick. So right now it gives really amazing coverage, but DIY paint is extremely pigmented and has excellent first coat coverage anyway. But if it ever gets too thick and you need to water it down, it is water based, and you can water the paint down to go on smoother. So our water bottles are they're not water bottles, our milk bottles. They are dry now, and I'm going in with a second coat. One thing is the paint can be wet distressed, so you have to use a really light touch when you put a second coat on, or sometimes you will actually remove your first coat when putting on your second coat if you're not careful. So you can spray it with water to kind of thin it down, and that helps a little bit, or you can seal your first coat before you put your second coat on. But I'm just using a really light touch and being careful and adding my second coat and making sure that I do not remove my first coat in the process. Now that all 4 of our milk bottles are dry, we have to seal in our clay-based paint, and I'm using Debi's Design Diary wax in clear. I'm applying it with an old dish towel, like a flour sack towel, but I had actually used it to apply a dark wax at one point, and so I wasn't intentionally thinking that I was going for an aged look, but I did really like the way that the dark that was still in the rag mixed with the clear and gave those bottles kind of a little bit more of an aged look because they had screw-on lids, and as we know, antique milk bottles did not. I decided to use this twine. I did not decide to do it off camera. I just seemed to have apparently bumped it and didn't realize the camera was shining up a little farther on the counter than it was before. But I just wrap it around. Really no rhyme or reason. I'm not intentionally trying to be perfect. I'm just wrapping it around a bunch. I'm using it's a fabric tack glue that I had up here. And then I'm just kind of putting a little bit when I start, and then a little bit at the top there to hold that final piece. It does dry clear.
So I have to laugh because apparently my storage on my camera was full and I didn't get a lot of what I thought I was filming. But what I have done is fill two with the, oh, looky there. We'll have to fix that. I have two that I have filled with not quite a whole one of these. These are actually from Michael's. And I have no idea how long ago. They were $1.99, and I feel like they items are much more expensive now, so I don't know how long these have been in my stash. But speaking of Michael's, what do you guys think about Joann's closing? I didn't make it in the store all that often, but I did order stuff online, so I am very sad to hear about Joann's going away, and I love the idea that it was there if I needed it. So yeah, still have Michael's and Hobby Lobby, but I did really enjoy Joann's. Somehow I just felt closer to Joann's emotionally because of that they were actually more of a sewing, and that was something early in my life. So the thing I'm doing right now, I cut them all off because I think that is the most cost-effective way to deal with floral. I think first of all, it looks more real when you're not trying to create a bunch. And I think secondly, it just spreads out farther. But these jars, whoops, gotta remember to glue that back on. These jars, I don't want to go all the way down in there, so I am literally just using some scrap foam that came around something new that I bought, and then I am going to, whoops, I didn't put any in there yet, and I'm going to fill these up, and that's it. We're going to be done with this one. But yeah, just let me know in the comments. Did you go to Joann's? Are you going to miss it too? Oh, I'm going to definitely have to put more glue on here. Lessons learned. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put the flowers in here, and then I'll come back and kind of clean that up. Alright, so I have one left that we'll just go ahead and use. No reason to just save the one. Alright, there we go. Alright, I'm going to fix the glue on these and then move on to the next thing.
After only one coat on our wood round and it's completely dry, I am just sanding it with my 240 sandpaper here. And I just want to get around the edges of all of it. Our metal cage-like thing with the handle and the metal tray, both are a little rusty and have that patina. So I'm going to kind of age this to go with it. I didn't want one stark, perfect base and then an older looking rest of it. And I'm not worried too much about the center there because, of course, obviously that metal tray is going to get screwed back on. But I am going all the way around the edge and making sure to get where it would just naturally distress anyway. And just like everything else, we are going to seal that paint in with our Debi's Design Diary clear wax, still using the same rag. And, you know, one of the things that I really should be doing is not re-dipping. You know, you talk about double dipping with your favorite cheese dip. When you have company, well, you really shouldn't be double dipping with your wax either. It contaminates, it adds contaminants into your wax. Like where I had sanded this paint, it potentially, I could be putting paint dust back in there. So, you know, I think I say this over and over again. Do as I say, not as I do. But scoop out a little bit of your wax, put it on a plate, and then use that. Now let's get everything reassembled. We're going to put our little candle holder or whatever you want to put in there tray back on here. It just has these tiny 2 little screws. I did paint over the holes and had to poke it with the screwdriver to make sure that I had the place to put those little screws. But we will do this, wipe it clean. It just was dusty. And then we will put our cage over, doing it the same way in reverse of how we took it off. Going to poke it through those holes, flip it upside down, and use our needle nose pliers to hold that tiny little nut in there. And I've got it right up in front. I have a camera between me and the item, so I'm going to try and then give up and take it down where I'm not trying to do this around a camera, but you pretty much get the gist of it. So I wanted to show you that I did actually get those in there. I also sanded and waxed the bottom, because obviously there is nothing wrong with things being upcycled and repainted or handmade. But can you imagine if you went to a high-end store and you picked it up and the bottom had all the paint like that? So anyway, whether it's the back or the bottom, I like to make sure that I completely finish things.
I've been gone for too long, standing here a while just to take it all in. Radio's playing our song, and then you stood there smiling at me as so many times before.
Okay, so check out these canisters. I paid $2 a piece for them, and they still have the plastic liner, could stand to be washed, and they are in really good shape. I am going to remove the eagle and paint them and do something different with them, because I have a set very similar that I've had for sale for over a year that hasn't sold, and I may actually do something with those too. But we're going to try it on these since these haven't been done, and we'll get these out of our stash. I will probably hold the eagles because I may use them on something else later. But we're going to get these cleaned up and painted. They're in pretty rough shape, and then we're going to use some IOD transfers on them. So here, let's get started. All right, so we'll start with taking our little price tags off. So I actually picked these up at the vendor mall where I have my booth. I have a booth in 2 different vendor malls. They are located in Clarksville, Indiana, if you are relatively local. And they both have my ampersand unique gifts sign, so you can identify me and see the ampersand unique gifts. I didn't want to use a screwdriver, but I think I'm going to get something a little stronger before I break my blade. But yeah, so I have a website, and then I have items in my booth. So these I have one set is currently on my website, and I will take these up to the booth when I am finished. But we will, again, hold on to these beautiful eagles. There may be something I decide I want to do with them later, but we'll sand that down and get ready to go. I do like the little brass embellishments there on, yeah, it's on both sides. So maybe when we distress back our paint, maybe we'll try to see if we can't get that brass to come through just a little bit. Okay, so I'm not trying to sand all of our finish off or anything. I just wanted to sand any texture where that was, and then kind of just get any rough places around the edges. So now that everything has a really good scuff sand, we're just going to take some Clorox wipes and wipe off all of our sanding dust before we start our paint job. So this paint is an all-in-one paint, and it covers just about anything. So I'm not really too worried about any of the stain that's on there, and I'm not
I'm going for an aged distress look, so I'm not too worried about scratches. You know, we'll probably sand some of those back out. But I just want to get the dust off from where I sanded it. And I did, excuse me, I just took a little wood glue and glued that back on. So that has been put back on. We are ready to go. So I am going to be using, somewhere over here, the Fusion Carriage House. It is a little bit lighter than the Bayberry that we used earlier. And I think both of these are a beautiful antique green, vintage green color, but I want to use the Carriage House because it's a little bit lighter, and I think it will actually look a little bit better with my transfers. So let me grab a brush and get going. So I am using a zebra paintbrush. I love these. This is the angled brush. I am only painting the outside, so I am not going to be painting the inside. So I'm just coming up, and I'm going to leave this lip and the inside paint free. You can see how good this coverage is. I mean, this paintbrush just picks that paint right up, and it just glides it on there. So we'll see after this dries whether or not we think we need another coat. I mean, it may be that we can get away with just one coat. Green is my favorite color. I love all shades of green, but this green that just has this beautiful vintage look is so pretty. My favorite green is the kind of the bright light green of a peridot burstone. Peridot, depending on how you say it. But what is your favorite color? Let me know in the comments what your favorite color is, and is that your favorite color to paint with? Or do you like painting with things a little bit more neutral, and maybe your favorite color is, you know, orange, but you like to paint with something a little more neutral? Let me know in the comments. All right, so I think one coat turned out perfect because I am going to distress it anyway. So I have this, it's 240, and I am just going to distress on all the edges because that's where it would distress. I'll do kind of a straight coat just in general. This coat has a built-in, or this paint has a built-in sealer. So it means that you can't wet distress it because it has sealed. But you can, however, use sandpaper. Okay, so they're all distressed. And I do want to say that if you are one that does not like the distressed look, then skip it. I distress things, especially when they are already mid-century vintage items, because I believe that if this had been truly painted, this beautiful mid-century vintage color green, by now it would have had bumps and bruises. The original finish had bumps and bruises. So there's no reason to think that this wouldn't also then look like that. But I am waxing it only because I want to provide that protection on that raw wood. So I'm using up some old transfers. This is when the IOD transfers still came in a roll. They now come in a flat pack. But this is one of the old rolls. It is the Astoria Foliage. It is black and white only. There is no other color. And I am going to cut out, I've used some of it, but I'm going to cut out some more of these flowers in this pattern to put on our canisters. All right, so we're going to start with our first one here. And I am going to, I'm a little worried that that's going to be, we'll try. Okay, anyway. So I'm just going to center this from the pattern in the middle. I thought I had a little more on the edges, but when I went to do it, I had apparently cut one side too much. And we'll use the applicator stick that comes with them. Kind of give it an overall rub just to get it to adhere and hold on. And then kind of pick a spot to start.
And this is where we'll kind of gently peel up on the plastic, on the carrier plastic. And if you go to pull a spot that's not adhered, just kind of rub again on that spot, put it back down and just rub again. And go until you get the whole piece. I'm just gently lifting up. You want to kind of be careful when you get to the other end, because if you're still pulling, sometimes it'll come real fast and it'll pull it with it. So I usually will kind of turn, get to a different spot, and kind of pull from a different direction. Because I've had it where it did that and it ripped part of it and I could not get it to line back up. So here, get a hold of it. And I'll probably come back and add a flower or something that kind of goes over each side of the edge, just to kind of help where it ends so abruptly there. But there we go. I love that black on top of this green. Okay, to help soften up the edges, I'm just using my sandpaper to go ahead and cut and help soften. This one I didn't get all the way over to the side. So let me see, I'm going to sand here. And that kind of helps if we distress it back. I can kind of explain that maybe it has, as long as it's not a flat edge. I thought I had it all the way over to the side, and apparently I didn't. So we are just going to wear it a little bit more there, and then we'll distress it everywhere. And then we will seal in. You want to make sure to seal in a transfer. So I'm going to use my clear wax that I have used everywhere else. And ta-da! Hey, okay, I picked up this bucket. I just thought it was so cute. I love the patina on it. Looks like it used to have some green floral foam glued down in there, but we are just going to give it a little extra oomph with our IOD transfer. This is the Rose Botanical. It's one of my absolute favorites. I love all the different kinds, and so we're going to pick something that we can put on here. I've used most of the little ones. There are 3 sizes. So you can see that they just kind of keep getting smaller. And I could just use these around the bottom of it, but I think this is a good opportunity to use a bigger one. These yellow roses are just some of my absolute favorites in here. I kind of like the pink. Let's see. So my goal is to just get something. So here's the bottom, and then I can kind of bring some of the leaves up, but I'm only going to do one side because that one puts it way down at the bottom. With, all right, I think I like this one. Let's go ahead and do this one.
So we're just going to use the applicator stick that came with it and begin rubbing down as best as we can. Some people will tape theirs down. I kind of move around from right to left too much.
Okay, Houston, we have a problem. I did not take into consideration that this was not smooth. It feels smooth, but you can see it was not sticking to it. So that's kind of a bummer. So, yeah. I'm going to have to clear coat this. Okay. So now that we have sealed this with a clear coat spray, we're going to apply our beautiful transfer. So we're going to try this again. I didn't realize that it was so, powdery. I thought it was just kind of the way it looked because I really love the patina that's on here. But we're going to go ahead and do this. It's got quite a bit of ripples and bumps.
Yeah, full transparency, guys, I still had trouble with this, and I really had to go over and over it again. I normally don't have this much trouble putting a transfer on a bucket like this. It really will stick to metal very easily most of the time. So whatever the coat was on this bucket, it was very strong. I would have thought that using that clear coat spray paint would have sealed it well enough, but I even cut some extra pieces off of the transfer and added some of those leaves to try to cover up where this transfer didn't stick and chunks of it came off. Once you finish getting your transfer on there and you pull that plastic carrier sheet off, you can use that to burnish the transfer down into it. So there's some places here and there's kind of some wrinkles you can see where the transfer did not adhere to the bucket in the middle. It's not that unusual when you have a big design like that, so you just use that plastic sheet and kind of smooth down over it. You want to go easy so that you don't rip the transfer if there's a bubble underneath there. And so I'm just adding some of those words right across the middle here, just to add a little extra dimension, but also it's covering a tiny little hole where I accidentally ripped part of the transfer. Remember this guy from earlier? I forgot to show you he was finished. So see where I painted the dark green on the back, so now it all blends in, it looks finished. Added that little piece of felt on the bottom, and then also I waxed and coated that transfer there on our bucket, and here are our final projects all together.
Yesterday